Well, make sure you like and subscribe and follow me on my Twitch and my other YouTube channel. Those links are down below. Also my Patreon, where I have more content on there that I don't post here.
Don't let me leave, Murph. Don't let me leave, Murph.
Today I'm going to be reacting to 5 reasons you shouldn't mess with the United States.
The collapse of the Soviet Union in the early 90s left the United States as the sole superpower in the world, and it's never looked back. In all aspects of the world, the United States is indeed a superpower, especially when it comes to its military might, which is unsurpassable in its strength, technological superiority, operational capabilities, and power projection across the globe. In this video, we'll take a look at the 5 top reasons why you wouldn't want to go against the US military establishment. The United States Air Force is the strongest in the world, not only in the number of operational aircraft, but also in technological superiority. The country currently operates a total of over 15,000 military aircraft, combining all the branches of the military service, including the US Navy, US Army, Coast Guard, and the US Marines. As of 2017, the US Air Force alone has a fleet of over 5,300 aircraft, 406 intercontinental ballistic missiles, and 170 military satellites, greater than any other country in the world. The USA has the largest number of stealth aircraft designed to be silent killers and untrackable by the radar defense systems of most countries in the world. Some of these stealth aircraft include air superiority fighters, such as the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, heavy bombers, such as the B-2 Spirit. In fact, the United States pioneered this technology in the 1980s with the introduction of the F-117 Nighthawk stealth attack aircraft. Stealth aircraft are designed to avoid detection using a variety of technologies that reduce radar reflection from ground, sea, or air-based radar antennas, thereby reducing its radar cross-section, or RCS. This revolutionary technology allows a 5th-generation aircraft, such as the F-22 Raptor, with a max takeoff weight of 83,500 pounds, to have a radar cross-section of just 0.0001 meters squared, about the size of a bumblebee. What's more insane is that the massive B-2 bomber also has the same radar cross-section as the F-22 Raptor. Thus, it becomes extremely difficult to track stealth aircraft. Even if the enemy spots them on their radar scopes, it's a whole other story to successfully track them and register a missile kill. The whole idea behind this technology is to break the chain in which a conventional surface-to-air missile defense system works. It's the same reason countries like China and Russia are also hard at developing their own stealth fighter, the Chengdu J-20 and the Sukhoi Su-57, respectively. These aircraft will allow the US Air Force to assert its air superiority over any battlefield of the future, and we all know that control of these skies is the biggest decider in any war.
This is actually probably the reason that I would assume I would find the most interesting, just because it has to do with aircrafts. But I'm not sure, because it's literally the first reason out of 5, so maybe it just gets progressively more intense, or things that people don't actually know about as much. I think that aircrafts in the military are probably something that is easily looked up. I mean, I've heard of some of those before. I don't think that I've ever tied them to pictures or have really watched a lot of videos on them. At least lately, it's been a long time. I think several years, and my memory is not very good. But when I was actually interested myself in going to the Air Force, of course I looked into it, and even at that time, I'm making it sound like it was 20 years ago, even at that time, it didn't really stick, but I did find it really interesting, and also kind of agree that it seems like aircraft, or whoever controls the air, is kind of one of them, at least one of the most important aspects of war or military. But I also know that people kind of have like a stuck-up view of the Air Force, so
The next reason why any country going to war with the US military should think twice is because of the strength of the US Navy and its dominance over the world's ocean, especially the Navy's supercarriers. The US Navy currently operates 11 nuclear-powered Nimitz-class supercarriers, which is the largest aircraft carrier fleet in the world. The only Navy that can come close in terms of technological advancement is probably the Royal Navy of the United Kingdom, but they only have 2 operational carriers. The Nimitz class of carriers has a displacement of over 100,000 tons and can carry a complement of up to 70 aircraft. They're literally a floating small town in the ocean with its own airport. The Nimitz-class carriers in themselves are extremely potent offensive weapons, but the way they operate in what is called the carrier strike groups makes these ships even more deadly. A carrier seldom deploys alone. There are always a fleet of surface and underwater assets surrounding them and forming a strike group. These include guided missile cruisers, a destroyer squadron, attack submarines, and other support vessels. Together, they project the power of the carrier and at the center of the group forward towards the enemy. While the carrier is carrying out its offensive role with the use of its air wing, the other ships are responsible to protect its flanks against any enemy attack. This combination of offensive and defensive strategy makes the US carrier strike group almost impenetrable. The United States Navy maintains 9 such carrier strike groups, 8 of which are based in the United States and one that's forward deployed to Japan. For over 50 years, this has been the principal element of US power protection, and the Nimitz class of supercarriers are at the center of it all. Despite this, the US is currently in the process of developing a new class of carriers called the Gerald R. Ford class, intended to replace the Nimitz-class ships. This new supercarrier will be even more technologically advanced and is expected to continue US dominance of the oceans well into the late 21st century.
That one's really interesting. Definitely know less about ocean stuff and fleets, marines, navy, all of that information. And this one, the second place has 2 compared to, I guess, US 11. That's intense because even as people are building, there is such a distance ahead that it seems impossible to catch up. There would have to be some significant or extraordinary reason as to why some other nation would be able to catch up to what's comparable to what we have. The other thing that I found interesting, which is probably dumb for me to think, is, wow, those are fascinating. And it really puts it in perspective of how large they are once you actually see one of the planes or aircrafts taking off on it, because it can fit 70 and it is its own airport. So it's funny hearing it described as if its own little town. And then it's hard for me to not imagine, okay, well, if somebody did slip by, happen to drop something on it, you're completely taken out because it's a ship, it's a vessel, it's one thing, but it's not. There's all of these attack submarines and all of the other stuff that he said.
The third reason why you shouldn't fight the US military is their massive stockpile of nuclear and conventional intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs. The ICBM plays the role of the land leg in the US nuclear triad, along with the Trident submarine-launched ballistic missile, SLBM, and nuclear warheads carried on long-range strategic bombers. ICBMs are launched from ground-based missile silos, achieving high suborbital spaceflight, approximately 1,000 miles above the surface of the Earth. The body of the missile then separates from the warhead, which re-enters the atmosphere and free falls to the assigned target at hypersonic speeds. The US military currently operates 400 ICBMs from its base in Wyoming, Montana, and North Dakota. The LGM-30G Minuteman III is the only type of ICBM that is currently operational in the US. The Minuteman III family of ICBMs were first developed in the 1960s as a response to the Soviet nuclear threat. Throughout the Cold War and beyond, these missiles have undergone constant modernization. In the last decade alone, the US military has undertaken $7 billion worth of upgrades. The rocket propulsion engines, the propellants used, the guidance system, and even the flight control surfaces have all been refurbished. The upgraded missiles are completely different from its 1960s counterparts, except for the shell. These state-of-the-art improvements and modernization programs have kept the Minuteman III system operational for over 50 years, with improved reliability that supports the missile's remarkable 99% alert rate. The latest versions of the missiles have a range of over 8,000 miles, which is greater than the diameter of the Earth at 7,917.5 miles. They can carry multiple 330 kiloton nuclear warheads, which is 20 times greater than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not only that, each of these warheads can be assigned to different targets independently. The technology is called Multiple Independently Targetable Re-Entry Vehicle, or MIRV, and was first developed for the Minuteman III family of missiles. So any country messing with the United States will have to deal with this awesome arsenal of firepower, which can be launched at a moment's notice.
This one seems like the most intense reason. It does seem very far ahead in the technology with all of the nuclear bombs that we would have. And I have watched videos like this describing ICBMs, I think is what he called them. I have no retention memory. It's actually frightening. But I watch videos on bombs and comparisons of bombs that exist and what people have, and the comparisons of how much stronger they are. Especially, they're usually compared to Hiroshima, just because it's the best comparison most people probably would use, that everybody knows about. And then I just still go on, always forgetting to where every time I see a video like this again, it's always re-fascinating to me because, wow, that sounds crazy. Even though no matter how many times I see it, it's really hard to compute. That was so devastating and that is so big. And then we're comparing to those bombs that we actually know the damage that it's done because it's been done before, to these things that we haven't technically seen before, but we're just going to go ahead and say that it's this much more devastating.
If it weren't the ICBMs or the stealth fighters raining fire down on you, it would be precision-guided munitions, or better known as smart bombs or PGMs instead. This is another big reason why not messing with the US military is a good idea. All branches of the US military use smart bombs in some forms or the other. These weapon systems are designed to be precise and hit a specific target with maximum efficiency. These bombs are so effective that during the First Gulf War, PGMs comprised only 9% of weapons fired, but accounted for 75% of all successful hits. Since then, for the US military at least, the days of normal artillery shells and unguided bombs are long gone. Nowadays, the military uses PGMs from air, ground, and sea. Precision-guided munitions come in various forms and use different kinds of technologies to achieve precise hits. A large majority of PGMs use the Global Positioning System, or GPS, of satellites to guide their trajectory to target. However, sometimes this becomes a problem, as GPS coverage is not always reliably available everywhere across the globe, or bad weather conditions can hinder operations. Thus, the Office of Naval Research, the Naval Surface Warfare Center, and the Army Research Laboratory have all coordinated to develop the first ever artillery-fired smart munition that will not use GPS guidance. The project is known as Moving Target Artillery Round, or MTAR for short. The MTAR shell can be guided onto stationary as well as moving targets in both land and sea, using a combination of guidance technology. The best part is that these shells can be fired from the existing M777A2 155mm towed howitzer and the M109A7 Paladin integrated management self-propelled 155mm artillery systems already in use by the US military. The shells will also feature an extended range of 40 to 60 miles using rocket boosters to propel them. Once finished, it will afford the US military another potent weapon system that outclasses others around the world.
I know to some extent precision-guided munitions have existed, but I think that it might be the one that I've thought the least about. Mostly because whenever I think of something like that, I kind of just group it into, oh, bombs. But no, precision-guided munitions also is really interesting because the part that I wouldn't have ever really imagined or thought about is not using GPS. As he was talking about it, I know this is really unrealistic. I just kind of imagined in my head it would be very interesting if something, because everything's so technology based now, it's great for precision, but then really faulty for, now you can't just rely on human precision if something goes out. I'm sure they have backups after backups, but it's interesting still to imagine, oh, well, what if this just one thing doesn't work? And then they cover it in the video, which is they're still learning on technology to be able to just kind of focus or hone in on moving targets without using GPS. Which is fascinating because then the only thing that would hinder that is if the target stopped moving. But I would assume they cover that too. If it stopped moving, if it doesn't, it's already locked onto it. Regardless, it's going to hit that target. So it won't be affected by bad weather or something hacking or breaking up the connection because it's just locking in on this thing that's moving. It's just locking in on the target.
Lastly, the fifth and final reason why you shouldn't fight the US military is drones. We're all familiar with what an unmanned aerial vehicle or drone is and what it's supposed to do. But in recent years, the usability of UAVs are steadily increasing to encompass all spheres of military operations, and the US military is the pioneering spirit behind it. At first, used only for surveillance missions, drones were quickly weaponized after the 9/11 attacks and have been extensively used by the US military in the war against terror as an offensive weapon platform. It's forecasted that over the next decades, the US is in line to purchase over 1,000 combat drones of various classifications. Some of them, like the Lockheed Martin RQ-170 Sentinel and the Boeing MQ-25 Stingray, are already in the final stages of development, and once finished, will provide the US military with state-of-the-art platforms capable of multi-role operations, ranging from attack missions to aerial refueling. Drone technology has reached such heights today that a single UAV can loiter miles above the surface of the Earth for hours, waiting for the target to show its head and sticking with impunity. This capability will allow all the services under the US military to reduce its dependency on manned platforms, thereby reducing the risks during future combat operations. These 5 weapon systems make the US military extremely dangerous for any adversary looking to get into a conflict with them. In a conventional warfare setting, it's almost impossible to beat the US military machine. That's why modern enemies of the United States are employing more and more asymmetric warfare strategies against the mighty US military. Despite that, the US military juggernaut is hands down the most powerful military complex in the world today, and probably will be for decades to come. That's all we have for you today, folks. Thanks for sticking around till the end.
I liked the mention of the aerial refueling because it's something that I don't think that I've also ever thought about, but may have thought about it once or twice. Whenever you're kind of in the middle of something or a really long mission, whatever you want to call it. Very interesting that maybe the drones could also be responsible for refueling aircrafts in the air. That's interesting to me and fascinating. Saves a lot of trouble, saves a lot of time. So that definitely adds a lot to it. But yeah, if you haven't already, make sure you check out this channel that I got the video from, which is called Destiny. And then like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you also haven't already, check out all my links down below. And I'll see you next time.
I may be blue.